So this is 5 Minutes with David Buonaguidi, Chief Creative Officer at Karmarama. Hi Dave.
Hi.
Can you give us a quick summary of your career to date?
Oh, it'll be quick. I started off working behind the bar at my dad's restaurant, where I saw lots of very interesting, glamorous people coming in having lunch, and thought, oh, what do they do?
Where was that?
San Frediano, a place in Fulham, in Chelsea actually, in the sort of late 70s, early 80s. And I used to see these people and think, God, you know, they seem to live the life. They seem to be having lunch all day long with nice looking, glamorous women that obviously aren't their wives. Asked my dad, what do they do? He told me advertising. And I thought, well, that's the job for me. I went to art college where I kind of did graphics. They didn't have specific advertising colleges or courses in those days, but I did graphic design. And then through my dad's contacts, I managed to get a work experience placement at a couple of agencies, JWT being one of them. Just stayed in contact with the guys there, built up my portfolio, and then eventually got a job at TWA when it was very small in I think 1984. And then I worked at WCR. I worked there for a year. Worked at WCRS when it was quite small for a couple of years, and then I was lucky enough to get a job with Steve Henry and Axel Chaldecott, who were my group heads at WCRS, but they set up an agency called HHCL, which was Hal Henry, and went there when it was about 6 people, and sort of saw that place grow, and it was fascinating to see a small, very entrepreneurial agency start up and be part of that as a kind of, you know, as a junior. It was really exciting. Did that for about 4 years, saw that grow to about, I don't know, 50, 60 people, and then tried something where I worked at a big agency. The thing I'm always looking at is how do you get experiences that are going to change your thinking and challenge you a little bit. So I went from a very small agency like Hal Henry, which had grown massively over 4 years, to a very big floppy agency like JWT, which was an interesting experience because I just tried to use the stuff I'd learned at Hal Henry, all about collaboration, listening to clients, getting into client meetings as a creative, which normally in bigger agencies you weren't ever allowed to do, and kind of trying to understand with a much more entrepreneurial head on what the business problems are and how you can use creativity, real creativity, to solve those problems without just thinking about what's a nice ad or what's the industry going to find interesting. And so I went to JWT and had a really interesting time. It was a completely different environment because they're much more it was much more rigid in its structure and the way that it liked to work, but I think that they had clients who were begging for an agency to properly engage with them, and I think that at the time JWT and the clients had very different sort of work balance and getting burgled. After JWT, strangely, I went back to Hal Henry for 8 months. I knew I was only going to be at JWT for about 2 years, and it was a bit of an abusive relationship, I've got to say. I went in there and just had as much fun and learned as much as I could before I ran off, burnt quite a few bridges. And then I went back to Hal Henry, where I teamed up with a bloke that I used to work with in the past, and we were there for about 8 months, and we got asked to be the creative directors of Chart Day, which was the London office of a big American network. And we did that for a couple of years. We were very young. I have to say we were probably too young. I was about 28, didn't really know my arse from shit, and kind of. But we sort of had a very naive and quite idealistic view of what we wanted to do, and it was great when you're in a nice position where you got mum and dad over in the States who were giving you money and letting you try stuff, and knowing that they'll catch you if you fall. But we just had a great time. We had some amazing people there, and we did that for about 2 years, and the company started doing really, really well and started building a really good had a great vibe, started building a good reputation for itself, and then we, strangely, ironically, got bought by TWA, which was a big agency in Europe, small agency in the States, and they put the two together because of the Nissan account, and so we were effectively going to lose our jobs because TWA in Europe was very big, and so we ran off and reneged on a deal and moved offices very quickly without telling anybody, took all of our clients and all our people with us, and we set up an agency called St Luke's that was a cooperative, which was kind of interesting, but I wouldn't do it again. But it was interesting because we just wanted to try and do things in a different way, and the thing I love doing is challenging the way that we work and trying to find new, more efficient ways of working, but try and also embrace different ways of, or different aspects of the creative business, so that you really understand data and all of that stuff, and new technology coming in, and how you work with it, and also how you work with different mindsets of people. And St Luke's was I think an interesting crossroads for attitudes, because people started wanting to work in different ways, and so it was fascinating. But then I got headhunted to go and work or to get a chance to go and work in television, and I've never worked in TV. And I went and was creative director at Channel 4 for 2 years, and to have a whole load of experience from advertising and then take it into TV was very interesting. After 2 years at Channel 4, set up Karmarama with all the best bits of all the places I worked. Bish bash bosh.
And here we are today.
Here we are today. Sorry, a bit long.
That's all right. I thought it was going to be a quick one, but 6 minutes is quite a long time. You've got a long career, I guess. How would you describe the creative industry in 3 words?
Boring, uninspired, potential.
And on that note, what advice would you give to juniors looking to get into the industry today?
Personally, I would just try and get into any company. I mean, in a way, the first couple of years of your career, it's essential that you just understand the business. And unfortunately, when you're at college, you're being taught by people, no disrespect to them, but you're being taught by people who no longer work in the business. And the business over the last 2 years has changed probably more over the last 2 years than it has done over the last 20.
Absolutely.
And I think if you're being taught by people who've been teaching more than 2 years, you're fucked. And they'll teach you the rudiments of how you put layouts, or how you might think, or how you might dismantle a brief to start working on it. But the real trick is going to be when you get into an office, and all offices will be different. Saatchi's will be different from BBH, which will be different from Karmarama. We all have our own separate approaches to how we do things and how we work together. But I would say, be prepared for the first 2 years of your career, learning new stuff and new ways of working. And also, I think that gives you a chance to develop your own personal characteristics and what you want out of it, because you're much more in control than you ever have been.
Who inspires you creatively?
Nobody in the ad business. I mean, there are people that I was inspired by when I first started, David Trott and John Webster and some of those guys, but I have to say I find it a criminally creativeless industry, but that's because it's a business, and I think anybody who thinks that they're joining advertising to be creative wouldn't do that. It's a balance. You've got to be pragmatic. It's about pragmatic creativity, and you have to understand that you're a business. You get paid to make people's businesses work better with service. I would say I get more inspired by creativity anywhere else but advertising. So music industry, art, film.
What are your interests outside of work?
Motorbikes, shooting, girls in yoga pants, my children, my family. Making things. I love creative stuff, just painting, making robots for my kids, anything.
Who's the most creative person you've ever worked with? It's putting you on the spot, isn't it?
Fuck. Bloody hell. I'll have to come back to that.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Sorry.
What's the biggest risk you've taken in your career?
I've never taken any risks in my career. I mean, I've set up businesses, I've changed from advertising to TV. None of it felt like a risk, because I mean, risk is when you're going to die. You're going to break your arm. Nobody ever dies in advertising. No one ever breaks a finger in advertising, because it's not that kind of business. I've never felt any risk at all.
What's your favourite advertising campaign of all time?
Well, I remember when Top Gun came out. Apparently that was the biggest recruiter for the American Air Force of all time.
Amazing.
And I found that fascinating. That
accidentally.
Well, I think who knows?
Yeah,
it was accidentally or on purpose. I mean, YMCA was also a huge recruiter for the YMCA, and you sort of go, the Village People. That song. Now, I'm not saying either of those two films, or that first film, or that song, are my particular favourites, but I think there's something very interesting about thinking beyond traditional advertising, and that was a long time ago in the 80s and the 70s, and how you could create the climate for a brand to succeed by talking to people in a different way. So I have to say, there's probably no ads that do that, because I don't think ads have the same sort of impact. But I think, you know, when you get films like Top Gun and you hear that they are huge recruiters, there's something kind of very interesting there.
Let's move on to a quick fire round.
Yeah.
FWA or NMA?
Who?
That's your answer. Can Lion or D&AD pencil?
Kill them all. Kill them all.
Digital design or graphic design?
Both.
Apple or Android?
Apple.
Creatives or suits?
Both.
Degree or no degree?
Neither.
Outsourced production or on-site production?
Either.
Web or mobile?
Either.
Independent agencies or networked agencies?
Independent every time. Networks all die.
Good, we've got an answer out of you.
Yeah.
Miami Ad School or Hythe Island?
Either.
Watford or Bucks?
Neither.
And lastly, Don Draper or Roger Sterling?
Neither. I know, I've been sort of non-committal, but it's that's kind of what we like here.
No, I like that. It's your personality. That's your opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.